Hello, my name is Avery.
And my name is Kayla, and this is APUSH Investigators.
Today we'll be covering the Battle of Midway during the Pacific theater of World War II.
The Battle of Midway took place on June 4th through the 7th in 1942 at the Midway Atoll in 28 degrees and 12 degrees north and 177 degrees and 21 degrees west.
It took place only 6 months after the attack of Pearl Harbor and 1 month after the Battle of Coral Sea.
The battle was fought between Japan and the United States.
On the U.S. side, the naval leaders were Admirals Chester, Frank, and Raymond. On the Japanese side, the naval leaders were Isoroku, Chiriki, and Nobutake.
This battle was the turning point in the Pacific theater. It inflicted devastating damage on the Japanese fleet that proved irreparable. It was the most stunning and decisive blow in the history of naval warfare.
The Japanese operation sought to eliminate the United States as a strategic power in the Pacific.
Japanese wanted to lure the American aircraft carriers into a surprise attack and capture the island of Midway. But American intelligence had cracked the Japanese fleet codes and knew what they were planning. So the United States placed their carriers in position to surprise the Japanese, and this is what happened.
Today is June 4th, and earlier this morning, Americans caught sight of Japanese aircraft approaching the island of Midway. Look, the Americans have launched torpedo and dive bombers off to fight the Japanese planes. But wait, where are the torpedo planes? They seem to have gone separated from the dive bombers. Let's go back to Kayla in the studio to find out what happened.
Well, Avery, it looks like the torpedo bombers became separated from the dive bombers and were slaughtered. They did manage to divert the Japanese defenses, though, just in time for the dive bombers to arrive and catch the Japanese when they were rearming and refueling the planes, thus making them vulnerable to attacks.
The Americans managed to sink 4 of the Japanese fleet carriers with 322 aircraft as well.
The Battle of Midway was the turning point in the Pacific theater that was a decisive victory for the Allies, and the United States as a whole. The Battle of Midway was in some way retaliation, as it was the first major victory for the United States against the Japanese after the attack of Pearl Harbor.
The U.S. managed to kill 1/3 of the aircrew on board the fleet.
The most devastating part of the war for the Japanese was the loss of trained mechanics and aircraft ground crews who went down with the ships.
After the battle, American forces rode straight to Tokyo.
At the end of the battle, the Americans lost 1 destroyer, 1 carrier, 150 aircraft, and 307 sailors.
At the end of the Japanese lost 4 carriers, 1 heavy cruiser, 248 aircraft, and 3,057 sailors.
So in an overview, the Japanese tried to attack the American fleet by surprise and take them out of the war, as well as capture the island of Midway.
The Americans though had broken the Japanese fleet codes and knew what the Japanese were planning.
So, as the Japanese attacked, the Americans were not where the Japanese expected them to be and were taken by surprise instead.
As the Japanese were refueling and rearming, the Americans attacked, and the Japanese suffered with irreparable damage.
This was the turning point in the Pacific theater of World War II, as it was the first major American battle won against Japan since the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
Although both sides faced many casualties, it was a decisive Allied victory.
Well, that about covers the Battle of Midway. My name is Kayla.
And my name is Avery.
And this was APUSH Investigators with the Battle of Midway.